Rick, we've got a very interesting guest on the show today.
I saw that.
You've seen him on hit shows like Teen Wolf, Seinfeld. That's not shabby.
Yeah.
Right. How to Get Away with Murder. He's also a gifted writer and a playwright.
Oh, my gosh.
Right. He will talk about his one-act
Renaissance man.
Yes. Far more important and talented than
we are.
Been.
But we appreciate him stooping to come on this show.
Right after this jingle, we'll be talking to John Posey.
The following is a Tony Lasano podcast, an Opie show on the Radio Misfits Podcast Network. This is the Minutia Man Celebrity Interview with Rick and Dave.
So I thought you did a pretty good job there of telling everybody who we've got. John, are you there with us?
Hi, guys. How are you? Happy to be here.
Thanks for coming on. You know, obviously, you have had a heck of a career. It spanned decades doing television, film, live theater. You know, those are all very different kinds of roles. I mean, when you do TV, it's different than film. When you do theater, it's different. Do you approach each of those roles any differently, or is it you have like a
tell us your process?
Tell us the process. Let's go process.
Yeah, I don't even know what process means, John, but just tell us your process.
It's funny you guys bring that up because I teach also now, which many of us do when you reach a certain age, you start teaching. And I've got a class in New York here in a couple of days. And I was going to talk specifically about the differences in theater, film, and television, because while eventually it's the same, whatever your craft is that gets you there, it's so different whether you're in theater where you have a ton of time to rehearse,
right?
TV where you have no time to rehearse, and film, if you're lucky, you have a little time to rehearse. So you have to. I talk about just the preparation that you need, and they are also very different. And on top of that, it's if you happen to be a guest star in a show rather than a regular or recurring character, which I've done a lot of. There's a slight disadvantage of walking onto a set where 15 people have been together for 5 years, and you're supposed to knock it out of the park. Not sure what those relationships are. So there's a lot that goes into all of them, and I think I found myself. You mentioned Renaissance Man. I've used that as well. I think I think we all hope to have the Tom Hanks career, and if it doesn't quite fall that way, you find, at least I did. I found myself having to diversify and say, okay, what other doors can I knock down here? And it turned out to be a nice career in voiceover and commercial work. I wrote a play that I toured the country with for a couple of decades, and then started writing screenplays just because somebody asked me to write a screenplay based on my play, and I told them I knew what I was doing, and I didn't.
Yes, because we're both writers. I totally understand that. You know, the difference between writing a novel, and I've done several of them, and writing a screenplay is night and day.
Very much so. It's very technically different and structured differently, and I remember what happened was I had written a solo one-man show, which came from sort of my I started in Atlanta where I had a group that, for lack of a better expression, we were like Saturday Night Live. It was improvised. It was joke stuff. It was 7 actors on stage having fun and hoping that we would somehow replace the cast of Saturday Night, which we did not.
Right.
But I was offered
really
something
close,
out
John.
here in L.A.
You came really close to doing that, right?
That's what they said. So I took the skills I learned and I wrote this solo show, which not a lot of actors are comfortable with, where you're on stage doing what Eric Bogosian or John Leguizamo or Chaz Palminteri, we were all sort of doing these solo shows at the same time, and the studios were actually buying them. They were searching every theater they could find for material, and I had this one-man show called Father, Son, and Holy Coach, whereas Chaz Palminteri did A Bronx Tale because that's his world. I had come from the South, and I had a sort of different take on father-son stories. It was like the Great Santini if that had been a comedy. That's what Father, Son, and Holy Coach was. And from that, Sony did buy the rights literally on opening night. Wow. And which freaked me out because I never thought of it as a film. And when I sat in their offices the next day and they said, we'd like you to write the screenplay, I never batted an eye. I just ran out and bought the 2 or 3 well-known books on screenplay structure and studied them well and sat down and wrote what was quite a good script. It never got made. It sat over there and was optioned maybe for 6 years before it came back to me, but it got me to start writing other screenplays, which got me in the offices, which got me a couple of studio writing deals. And I had a film I wrote as a spec that was made some years ago called Legendary. That was not my idea. That was the studio head change that. But that was a film that starred John Cena before he became John Cena.
Oh, wow.
And so I kind of learned, fortunately, quickly reading the books, and I got the idea for structure, read a ton of screenplays, and was able to just sort of diversify and find myself working in that world, a little bit of TV writing, and somehow became this go-to guy who does a lot of recurring or guest star roles on TVs. And I'm not sure how an actor ends up in one or the other. I've had my share of pilots where I had the lead role that either didn't sell or had a short life or whatever. So you could just kind of, whatever they throw your way is what I did. And I also raised two sons who were successful actors. So there's that, which is something not everybody probably can say on top of everything else. Tyler Posey, who was the lead in Teen Wolf, is my oldest son. And then Jesse Posey, a couple of years younger, was in this film Selena. And if you guys have heard about this Scream Boat about this, I guess Steamboat Willie is now public domain. So,
right.
So and this is where Steamboat Willie, apparently he's some kind of a serial killer on a ferry, and it's got some great press. It's coming out next month, and my other son has one of the leads in that, so I'm looking forward to watching that.
Wow, that's great.
That's awesome.
God, it's got to be so gratifying. Or did you rear them to go into show business, or did you say, and we've talked to a ton of actors, like, oh, I don't want my kids doing this. Did you?
Yeah, a lot of actors would say that. No, my oldest son, Tyler, who's now 33, he used to come with me on the set. And in particular, he was probably 6, and I was in Florida shooting this long miniseries with Tom Hanks and a bunch of other guys. His post-Apollo 13 was a 12-part miniseries called From the Earth to the Moon. And I played one of the astronauts. Yeah, and we were down there for so long shooting this that I brought Tyler with me, and he was literally hanging around the set, asking important questions, standing in front of Video Village, watching what's going on, and standing next to a Tom Hanks or a Ron Howard or some of these guys, and if you looked at him, you'd swear he was calling the next shot. So as a little tiny guy, he just said, "This is something I'm interested in." And if you go watch Collateral Damage, the Arnold Schwarzenegger film, he's all of 8 or 9 in that film. And then Made in Manhattan he did with J-Lo. And so he was off and running and has always seemed to enjoy all aspects of the industry, whether he's working TV or film. He's a musician, so he's happy when he's doing film instead of TV, so he can take a little time off and pursue his music. But he's had a nice little career that's now probably, 22 years into it. And his brother got a later start. He wasn't interested. He was a baseball guy, and as soon as college baseball ended, he announced that he was going to become an actor. So there you have it. I've got these two guys, and recently in the last 4 years, the boy's mom had passed away 10 years ago, and I married an agent who has one daughter who's an actress. So we're like this blended Partridge family of 7 kids. And three of them are actors, and the mom's an agent, and the dad's an actor. So there you go.
So when are you guys all going to sing on that bus? You got that colored bus that you're going to be singing around on? No?
I imagine dinner being very dramatic. Yeah. Pass the potatoes.
Yeah, right. Exactly right. In this scene, the asparagus is my daughter is at the University of Illinois right now studying acting.
Yeah,
and there is just something. She was the lead in Sister Act, and I got to tell you, I still think about how great she was, like 3 times a day, and this is 2 years ago, you know, and it's so. And I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but for any parent that they watch their kids do anything, it's such a prideful moment, right? I mean, it's just such a. There's really no description on how that must make you feel.
Yeah, I had a funny story when he was young, I think right after he did Made in Manhattan, so he's sitting kind of high. I mean, that's a big hit, and it comes out every Christmas, and everybody seems to love the film. But some months after that, he was asked to read for some TV series, some dramatic 1-hour drama. I I forgot what it was. It started Anthony the Palliot, People Who Disappear, and I forgot what that series was. But he goes walking in, and he's got a little transformer that he's playing with. And he sits down next to me, and all these other young boys his age, I'm guessing he's 11 at this point, are wandering back and forth, reciting their lines to themselves the way a lot of actors do.
Right.
And Tyler casually looks up at them, looks at me, and he goes, "Amateurs."
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Which, I mean,
did you see my box office? Did you see my box office?
I mean, I don't think they were amateurs, but it was just he was like very cool and collected and very comfortable with himself. I think it was years later when he got to be 17 or 18. He said, "For the first time, I'm nervous about auditions." And I said, "Yeah, because you're being fed stuff where it's not so pure anymore. People were telling you why something won't work rather than why something will. So when you're 10 or 11, everything is very pure." And I know because I sometimes coach and teach other young kids, and I kind of see the same thing, that everything is very they're a little bit naive to the nose. They're just sort of excited about the potential, and when they get on set, they do great things. And you're right, it's fun to watch your kids, whether they're singing, playing sports, acting. And we've had the opportunity to work together about 3 or 4 times, all 3 of us in different things. And it's really, really fun, where we just treat each other like other actors that we enjoy hanging out and working with. And that's been a blast. Yeah. And we're not done. We're not done with that yet. Tyler was in the legendary film that I wrote. He's got a film that he wants me to do. Jesse and Tyler are doing some stuff together. They're doing a spoof on a Twilight Zone called Midnight Sector, I think, which you can find on YouTube. So they're having a ball working together, and I've got 3 or 4 more scripts that are out there. 2 of them are connected with Tyler, and we'll just see what happens with those. But it's been great to have them in the business with me. Really fun.
Do you have a couple of roles for a couple of aging podcasters by any stretch? You know,
if you ever need one, you know,
right. We can.
We've got someone in mind.
Yeah, we can do that. Hey, so you've been on Seinfeld and 24, and just a ton of different TV shows. Is there a particular role or an episode that stands out to you as, I don't know, either not just maybe the most memorable, but there's something about that experience, or maybe the fan response that, you think of when you think back at your career?
Your guest spot career.
Right. Yeah, there were, the Earth to the Moon was great because in addition to Tom Hanks actually directing and hanging out, there were quite a few actors, recognizable names that you watched through the years in TV who were playing other astronauts. There were a whole ton of us down there.
Yeah.
And so that was 9 months of joy, sitting inside a real capsule.
Wow.
And talking to real astronauts who talked about how that Apollo 13 thing, it was more the rule than the exception, that it was the talent of the astronauts that saved these various rockets that might have been spinning out of control. So there was that, and I think when you work as a guest actor, again, you have to kind of be prepared for anything. And I've had some really fun shoots, and Seinfeld would be one of them because it was early on, believe it or not. When the first season, people probably don't remember this, they were not even winning their time slot.
Yeah, it was a slow build. It was a slow build.
Yeah, they were losing to a show that starred Richard Lewis and Jamie Lee Curtis. The name escapes me, but
oh yes,
they weren't quite the juggernaut they became. So when I got there, I was in an episode called The Heart Attack, where George thinks he had a heart attack, but he doesn't, and Stephen Tobolowsky plays this holistic healer. He gives George something, and then he almost does have a heart attack after drinking it. And it's a very funny scene where I play a doctor that Elaine falls for, and my recollection of that, because I had walked into some sitcoms where maybe they were on the backside and there was some friction going on the set, and you could kind of feel it.
Yeah.
As the guest actor, you could go, wow, man, there's some tension going on here, and I'm not part of it, so I'll just do my job and shut up. But Seinfeld, everybody was very open to everything, from the director on down to the whole cast of 4. It's one of maybe 2 episodes that Larry David is actually in. And I just remember, not going in with any kind of fear. I always liked Jerry's stand-up. And again, it was very early on, and it was just really fun to do. And it's fun because it's like, 30 times a week that episode airs somewhere.
Yeah.
On the planet, and maybe in somewhere else in the galaxy. And so, people will discover it. Somebody will say, "Hey, was that you?" Of course, my hair is white now, and back then I had the same hair Jerry had, which was large, long, dark, curly hair. And it was just one of those things that comes back, and it's just so much fun to watch and see what the show became probably shortly. I think that was episode number 13 in their 180 or however many they did. And it was just so fun. And I remember Michael Richards actually walking up to me on the set. And if you guys remember Christopher Lloyd's character in Taxi, Michael Richards looked at me and says, "Do you think I'm doing too much?" And I go, "What?" He said, "No, man, whatever you're doing is original." But the fact that Michael wasn't that sure, and he was like that. He wasn't the guy. If somebody cracked up on the set of Seinfeld, which they all did, Michael was always the kind of guy that would go, "Hey, come on, guys, let's hold it together." Because as funny as he was serious about his comedy.
Yeah,
and so he wasn't as light, and he was actually, pulling people like me aside to ask my opinion of his character, which I thought was quite fascinating, as it was really coming together by episode 13. Yeah. But there's been, and everything is different. I remember when you mentioned 24, that was an interesting week to walk onto a show where Kiefer was doing great work. But he was a very, very intense guy, and if your character was not going to be a protagonist with him, then he wouldn't communicate with you, which I learned very quickly. In this case, he needed me to open a bank, to get something out of the bank. He was going to kidnap me or kill my wife, so there was no what my mom would call pleasantries. How are you?
Yeah.
It was, and right off the bat, he started sort of switching up what the director wanted to do, and I got the idea that he was really the de facto director of the episode, and just a very intense guy, and you had to sort of really roll with the punches and try to keep up with the guy, which is fine. It's okay. I mean, we had some physical stuff where we're fist fighting. And it was, I can see how it might rub some actors the wrong way because all of a sudden he just comes in and takes over. But when you look at what the show was like, you realize, okay, this is his baby. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I learned about being a guest actor is you know where you are in the pecking order.
Right.
And if something seems a little bit off, try your best to roll with the punches and do what you were hired to do. And it worked out fine. I mean, he'd give you a hug at the end of 8 days, but he wouldn't look you in the eye or talk to you during those 8 days.
And he's so a method actor, too, it sounds like.
Yeah, and this was, he was number one on the cast list, and it was all about him, and it was a very intense show, if you recall.
Yeah, it was.
Someone's trying to blow up the world with a nuclear bomb.
Right. And in 40 minutes, he can solve it every time. It was great.
Yeah, and I remember somebody just said, "Hey, just be prepared because it's a tough week." And it was exactly that. And sometimes his method of operation could be to keep me as nervous in real life as he could to show the fear of what was going on. So that was memorable for that, and it played out when I later saw it. I thought, hey, this worked out pretty well. So one of the things I tell actors is, whether it's a TV show like that or a film, you're going to always run into actors who have a different approach to their job, whether it's method or whether it's no rehearsal or way too much rehearsal or someone who begs for more takes or what likes to knock it out in one take. There are actors who, when you're doing your coverage, a good actor will stay there opposite. Some actors don't even want to be in there while you're doing your coverage, so you'll find out you're reading to a piece of tape on a wall.
Right.
But it's and that, which leads me to a funny story of all these various things. I did one of the last Perry Mason movies of the week before he passed away. At the end of Raymond Burr's career, the Perry Mason things, they were doing 2-hour movies of the week instead of the 1-hour episode. And in this one particular episode, he's defending me about a murder I didn't commit. I have a daughter involved, and he wasn't going to show up on the set until it was his time to show up in the courtroom. So I'm sitting in the courtroom, haven't met him yet, and we're 5 days into shooting, and the courtroom is very cold, and I found out why. At the end, Raymond Burr was a really large man. He was probably pushing around 400 pounds, and they wanted to cool the courtroom. And so when I walked in there, I saw, I think, 7 or 8 TV screens that had teleprompters in them. And so it occurred to me very quickly that Raymond Burr has probably earned the right not to have to memorize his lines. So as he's talking, he would pinpoint the 7 different screens and talk to them as if he was talking to the jury, as if he was talking to the judge or whomever. And he had gotten very good at this. And when he walked in, and I'm thinking, I say, well, since you're reading, I says, do you need me to be here? He goes, well, I won't be looking at you, so I don't care what you do. And I thought, oh, okay. And
Wow.
do you want me to leave? So it was very strange experience just to watch him never make any kind of eye contact with the actors. It was all lines that were on a screen. And, I guess after a certain time, you earn that right. He'd been in TV forever. But it was one of those just sort of learning experiences every time you get on the set with a different lead who's running the show. It's just sort of a fascinating piece of education.
So, I know for sure that I have seen that episode because I have literally seen every single Perry Mason episode. During the pandemic, I binged all of the original shows, the black and white ones from the 60s, and then I watched all the movies after that. So I've seen your work for 100% for sure.
I think it was called The Case of the Defiant Daughter, in case you're ever looking.
All right. I'm going to look that up.
I've got 3 cases of Defiant Daughters every day.
So, every actor we've had on the show tells us about the part that got away. And, many people don't know this, but you were originally cast as Danny Tanner in the pilot for Full House. Now, Bob Saget eventually got that part, but you didn't want that one, right?
Yeah, who needs that pressure?
It's kind of an interesting story, and you're right. I thought I can give you the whole story.
I'd love to hear it.
I don't know how they actually found their way to me, because first they wanted Paul Reiser, and then they wanted Bob Saget. Well, these are 2 very urban guys, and I was this guy from the South, not tall. I think Saget was well over 6 feet. I'm a guy's like 5'9", 185, and I have a body of a wrestler. So I thought, how did they find their way to me? But here's the story goes: it was Reiser first, and then it was Saget, and both those guys had taken other gigs. Saget was doing this morning news segment with Marriott Hartley, if you can remember going back that far.
Wow.
I was with my comedy group in Atlanta. This is mid-'80s. Somebody from ABC's in the audience. I don't know what they're doing in Atlanta watching a comedy show, but that's what they do. They pulled me aside and said, hey, we like your work. We have a potential show we're trying to cast. We haven't been able to find it. Would you fly to New York to meet with our casting people? I did. And they said, could you have a monologue ready? So I wrote the monologue that became that one-man show, Father, Son, and Holy Coach, which is an entirely different story. But I'm glad I wrote it. And then they flew me to L.A. I read for the series as the dad. I get the series. Nobody has mentioned anything to me about Paul Reiser or Bob Saget or anybody. Stamos is there. Dave Coulier is there. The Olsen twins are there. We shoot the pilot. Everything seems fine. Although I look at the pilot now and I thought, I could have used a lot of training. It really wasn't my cup of tea. My kind of comedy was that broad Saturday Night Live character stuff, and this was very sort of syrupy family, PG-13 with the Olsen kids. And I really don't. If you look at the pilot and you can see it, I don't think I was very interesting. But it was the first one out, and had I stuck with the show, I'm sure we would have gotten things rolling right along after a certain amount of time. But what happened was, I don't know, within 6, 7, 8 weeks after this, ABC bought it with me in it. Everything was fine. And I wasn't sure, like you said a minute ago, I'm not sure this is something I would have loved to have done or been a part of. I mean, there's fantastic money, and that would probably, I could sort of be wherever I want to be right now, or retired if I wanted to. There is that element, and who knew the show would last for 1,000 years. But suddenly Bob Saget, I think, was released from this show he was doing. And the guy that created Full House was a guy named Jeff Franklin, who hung out with the comics, which is where he found Dave Coulier, and then there were some TV producers who loved the stand-up comics. He later did Hanging with Mr. Cooper. I forgot the guy who had the lead, but he had another stand-up comic. And so when Saget became available, this guy went to the network and said, look, I don't have a problem with Posey. He's just not my guy. Saget is my, it's part of my posse. It's the guys I hang with. And because the network thought this guy had a fair amount of clout, I think he had worked on Laverne and Shirley and a couple of other shows, that was the end of that. Huh. And I get this call. Believe it or not, I was halfway across the country pulling a trailer with the rest of my furniture from Atlanta to L.A. It's not a good time to get a call. It's like, what do I do now? Do I just turn around and go back home again? So that's how that happened. It was never anything that I did right or wrong. Again, I'm sure there could have been a ton of improvement on my part after the fact, but it's just he was released from a show. The guy always wanted Bob Saget, and the rest is history. And one of the things I'll talk about when this does come up is a lot of people would have said, forget it, I'm going back where I came from, I don't need this. And initially I thought that, but I went to New York where I wrote the one-man show, was able to start working in New York, and the work that I've gotten over the years was be far removed from what you would have seen on Full House. A lot more drama than comedy, sort of a combination of things across the board. But it's okay that it happened. It allowed me to tell my kids, you never know what's going to be ripped away from you or what's going to fall into your lap at the last moment. You have to sort of be able to wing it and understand that. So it gave me an education right up front. And I had been on the other side of that since then, where I'd be doing pilots or TV series, and other people would come in and be released after a few episodes. So it's fairly common. It may not be as common on a show like Full House that people would call me. I would get these calls once a year because people can't believe that somebody else played this guy, and they inevitably find their way to me. And so there's the story. They say, what are your memories? I have, I was on the set for a week holding the Olsen twins. Other than that, I don't remember much about it.
And the Olsen twins did pretty good.
Yeah,
their career did pretty good. Let me just ask you a quick question. Did you ever see Bob Saget afterwards and talk? I mean, did you know him, or did you?
Never Bob. Stamos I had stayed in touch with. Dave Coulier. Oddly enough, Stamos became a friend of my son Tyler. When Tyler got the heat from Teen Wolf, they found themselves on the same circuit, the whatever you call it, the Young Actor Awards, or the whatever MTV does, or Nickelodeon, and they'd have this sort of entertaining conversation as, hey, my dad's John Posey. He's like, oh my God. So Tyler would say, hey, Stamos and I are buddies. But I never met Bob Saget. Once or twice I ran into the kids, Jodie Sweetin or Candace Cameron, but never did. Never met with Bob, and I was sad to see what happened to him a few years back. And it's just one of those. Unfortunately, it'll be on my tombstone. I can't seem to escape it. If you were to Google my name, I think the first 10 articles that come up is actually this one. And so, that's the way things go.
Well, we waited till the end. We waited till the end.
Yeah. Let the record show we did not lead with this. Okay.
Well, this has been fun.
To make sure I was legit.
This has been fun. We really appreciate your time, John. If people want to find out more about you, keep track of you, what's going on with your career, what is the best way for them to do so?
Well, I have two websites. One is just all the stuff I've done, and hopefully I've got some great screenplays that we have optioned, that we feel like we're getting close to, that Tyler's involved, so we'll see how that goes. But there's JohnPoseyStudios.com is for people who are actors who are just trying to figure the things out, and then they want to talk about the business or jump into a workshop. But otherwise, as far as the whole history of my stuff, it's just JohnSPosey.com, and it's just kind of a history of what we just talked about that I put out there. I do teach. I got kids overseas that I teach. I got a class in New York and one in LA, and people do call just to say, hey, can I work privately with you? I got questions about shows, and they ask the same questions you guys did at the top, which what's the difference between theater, film, TV, acting, which I can speak on for quite some time.
Well, we really appreciate it, and
we appreciate the 29 minutes and 47 seconds.
And good luck to you and your kids, and happy holidays, and good vibes your way.
Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks. Good talking with you. See you later.
All right, there goes John Posey.
Nice man.
Very nice man.
Yeah.
That's the sort of story there. It's similar. It reminds me of the guy who had the chance to be in Apple.
The
Ronald Wayne, I think his name was
one of the owners, the original owners.
It's the sort of thing where you're like, it's a good story.
Yeah,
so that's a good thing,
right? For me and you, it's fun to talk about. But for him, it's. But he didn't seem to have any.
No, and he's got a great attitude
and
about
a great career. And,
I mean, you would be bitter.
Oh my God, that Bob Saget. Oh.
All right. Well, we have people to thank for the show. First of all, obviously, thanks to John for being on the show. Thanks to Brandon
for booking
him. Also, thanks to Tony Lasano, executive producer with Opie Productions.
Ed Silla, thanks for distributing it.
And we'll be back again soon. Hey, it's a top 10
in the world.
A top 10 celebrity interview show. So what else can you do? You'll check it out.
We're going to ask for more money.
Oh, okay. Well, it's not
this is where we're going to.
Is this when it happens?
Yeah, that's the
so this may be our last episode.
Right. Well, you as a I'm looking at, in fact, his son Tyler.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I got a call with him. Okay. I got a Zoomer at 4 with him.
Okay, yeah, get rid of the dead weight. We may be back again with another episode of
Minutia Men Celebrity Interview.
The proceeding was a presentation of the Radio Misfits Podcast Network. Find our other great shows on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and at RadioMisfits.com. Thank you.
This has been a presentation of Opie Productions.
Tony, can you shut up?